Cosmonaut Quickie!
Now, I'll be the first person to tell you that I consider the first Spider-Verse movie to be a solid 10 out of 10. I love that movie. It's perfect. I could watch it any day of the week and still love it. Not only is it a technical masterpiece, it's just staggering how solid the narrative is. It has great writing, it has great characters, it has a great story, it's funny as hell, and it's emotional. It's everything that I want a superhero movie to be. It is my favorite superhero movie of all time, and it's pretty hard to top it. And as such, I kinda had the idea that this movie doesn't really need a sequel at all. But here we are. The sequel is now out, and the main question is, does it manage to be at least as good as the first one? And a lot of people are saying yes. And I'll admit, in many ways, it is. But overall, I kinda like the first one more. And I still really like this new movie. I'm not saying the second Spider-Verse movie is not an amazing experience. First of all, on a technical level, they somehow managed to top the first movie. This movie is, quite frankly, a visual masterpiece. There are more art styles utilized in this movie than I thought possible in a single feature film. Every character and universe explored in this story comes packaged in a unique, jaw-dropping art style. Every scene utilizes various unique animation techniques. It makes this the most visually appealing superhero movie that I've probably seen in my entire life. There was one scene in particular that featured two characters having an emotional argument, and it's just framed in the typical shot reverse shot, but every time the shot changes, the colors of the shot change dramatically to show the conflict that the characters are experiencing. It's not the most complex idea in the world, but it makes the scene more engaging. The animation team really just decided to do whatever came to mind, and it works so well here. And I really love that the Spider-Verse movies have started this new trend of animation, and they're still the ones doing it better than anybody else. The main thing that was shocking me while I was watching this movie was that I could not figure out how they made this movie in the amount of time they were given. It felt like this is a movie that should have taken 10 years to make. And that's not even considering the fact that the sequel's coming out in under a year. That's just insane. And like I said, it's safe to say that they definitely topped the first movie as far as the visuals go. And I honestly did not even think that was possible, because the first movie looks amazing too. But the presentation also goes beyond the visuals. Daniel Pemberton already made the best Spider-Man soundtrack in the first movie, and then he went ahead and just topped himself in this one. The original score for this film is perfect. He utilizes so many different musical styles to set the stage for various unique situations and locales that the characters explore. I like how the soundtrack utilizes heavy drum beats whenever Gwen is having an emotional moment. And then we get this droning synth for when the movie's getting darker in tone. And that's not to mention that the soundtrack can't sound heroic and triumphant when it needs to be, because this is a superhero movie after all. I also love that this movie lets the characters get fleshed out a little bit more. We didn't learn too much about Gwen in the first movie, but here she feels like the co-lead. Half of the time, I would consider her to be more of a main character than Miles. Like, she shares about even screen time with him. But even so, Miles does manage to carry an entire Spider-Man movie without any Peter Parkers sharing the spotlight. And that is crazy to me, that Miles Morales, a character that honestly has never been that compelling in the comics, can be such a strong lead in this story. Like, I love Miles in the first Spider-Verse movie. I really do. But this one made me realize just how badass he can be. This is the movie where he becomes Spider-Man. And honestly, all of the character work was great. There are multiple antagonists in this movie, and I was equally invested in both of them. And we know just how hard it is for superhero movies to pull that off, especially Spider-Man movies. I also love that this movie uses Spider-Man tropes and the meta-analysis of Miles Morales as a character as narrative devices. This story is one that's able to twist the core concepts of a Spider-Man story and manage to show us a narrative that we haven't seen Spider-Man experience while still being very true to what we expect from the character. Spider-Man's trauma has always been a core part of the character, and this movie asks the question of whether Spider-Man needs that trauma to be Spider-Man. I'm trying not to spoil anything too much, but I love that a good portion of this movie asks the question of whether Miles really is Spider-Man or not. And this is all about him proving that yes, he is. But now we get to the core question. What is keeping this from being as good as the original for me? Honestly, it's probably the fact that I don't feel like I watched the end of the movie yet. Like I've said before, this movie is just part 1 of 2, with the sequel being planned for early next year. And that leaves this movie feeling like kind of an incomplete experience. This movie spends most of the time building up a lot of emotional stakes, but it doesn't have the time yet to reach a satisfying climax. A lot of the plot resolution and emotional payoff is being saved for the sequel. There is no scene in this movie that even comes close to matching the emotional payoff of the "What's Up Danger" scene from the first movie. That scene was built up to naturally throughout the movie, and that movie had excellent pacing. I can't really say that the pacing of this movie was doing it for me. The first third of the story drags a bit, but it's really hard to say if that's even a bad thing, because so far it feels like this is meant to be watched as a 2-part mega movie, in which case having a slower start would actually work out just fine. The thing is though, as it stands right now, I can't tell if the extra time spent on the first third of this movie is going to be worth it or not. And with how this movie leaves off, I have no idea where this story's going. I have no idea what it's going to look like. Judging by the fact that all of the Spider-Verse movies so far are amazing, it's safe to say that the next movie isn't going to suck, but I've had a really hard time judging this movie as its own movie, because it does feel like the first half of a bigger picture. And I've seen a lot of people say that this movie is somehow better than the first one, and I can't take that seriously. I'm sorry. It's like if I read the first half of a book, and then I said, this book is a 10 out of 10. No questions asked. Like, that wouldn't make any sense. And yeah, maybe this 2-part Spider-Man mega movie could be the greatest Spider-Man experience known to man, but right now, we don't know that for sure. Infinity War is one of the best superhero movies ever made, and Endgame, while being a very good sequel to that movie, doesn't really hold up on its own as a film, if you ask me. I'm not saying I doubt this team, but I am saying that I kind of have to wait to see where it's going before I judge the whole picture. I just need to wait and see if making this a 2-parter is worth it in the end. This new movie is amazing in its own very different way, but as it stands, I won't know just how good this story is until I see it finished. And I considered not giving this movie a number score, but I only like doing that every once in a while, and I already did it for the last Spider-Man movie, so for now, I'm going to give this movie a tentative 9 out of 10, with the potential to go higher or lower once the sequel's out.